Southern California is a region not exactly known for its waterfalls, but when it rains in the winter and spring, there's actually a bunch of them. In this video, we devote a Friday in April to explore some of the most iconic waterfalls in the area for the very first time. Now, this isn't my first time featuring Southern California waterfalls on this channel. Last year, we visited the Cleveland National Forest in San Diego County for Cedar Creek Falls and Three Sisters Falls, which I'll go ahead and put a link to in the description. And most recently, I had the opportunity to see Escondido Falls in the Santa Monica Mountains, which I'll once again put a link to down below. That actually made up the first of 2 days of a little weekend trip I did with my mom, and we both agree that Southern California is especially beautiful this time of year, not just because of the flow of its waterfalls, but because of how green the mountains get from all the rain. This was immediately evident when we entered the Angeles National Forest for our first waterfall of the day. Located north of Pasadena, Millard Falls is definitely the most family-friendly hike we'd be visiting. That said, it isn't without some obstacles, including several creek crossings. Understand that this is something every single trail in this video incorporates, so if you'd like to see some of these waterfalls, you will have to put in some effort. That said, it's only 1.2 miles out and back, and everything other than the crossings are a piece of cake. There's a paved road and parking lot to access the trailhead that you must have a U.S. Forest Service or National Parks Pass to park in. Then you'll make your way upstream and embark on the short trail to the waterfall. Compared to the other hikes in this video, the Millard Falls Trail takes you through a stunning forest that feels completely unlike Southern California. In terms of the crossings, experienced hikers will be able to carefully maneuver their way over rocks and logs to avoid getting wet. But my mom simply walked through the water as we found that to be a safer approach for her. Arriving at Millard Falls reveals a unique 50 to 60 foot tall waterfall. What makes this one special is the boulder at the top that sort of splits the water into two streams. Of course, there's much more flow on the left-hand side, but it's still a pretty cool look that I can't say I've seen anywhere else in the state.
Millard Canyon Falls, absolutely awesome, and I love how the shape of this one is so unique. You have this giant boulder that splits the waterfall into two almost. So cool.
Overall, Millard Falls was absolutely beautiful, but by a hair was my least favorite waterfall of the day, solely because it felt like it was the smallest. Still, it's well worth the visit, especially when you factor in how peaceful of a hike it is. Next up on our list was Eaton Canyon Falls, possibly the most visited waterfall in Southern California. This is mostly due to the fact that it flows pretty consistently throughout the year, even in the drier months. That said, I knew we were in a treat with how Millard Falls was flowing just a couple miles down the road. The trailhead for this waterfall can be found 15 minutes east from our last stop, and there's two ways you can access it. The first and most popular route begins in Eaton Canyon Park, right outside the National Forest boundaries. This is a flat 3.5 mile out and back route, but for an even shorter option, you can start at Pinecrest Gate, which is what we did. For this, you park in a residential area and make your way down an abandoned service road. Straight away, the views of the mountains are stunning, although they're a lot drier than the earlier mountains we saw deeper in the National Forest. This has to do with the fact that you don't actually enter its boundaries until you've made it about a quarter of the way through the hike. The first section doesn't have any creek crossings, but once you reach your first one, they come in rapid succession. I found there were a pretty equal amount of crossings on this trail as compared to the last one, but these were longer and more difficult to avoid getting wet on. I still managed to stay mostly dry, but it wasn't without strategizing what routes I wanted to take over the rocks. I personally think the 3 hikes in this video, but especially this one, would be most enjoyable for less experienced hikers when you can accept that you're going to get wet and just go straight ahead through the water. In terms of overall scenery, the cliffs were very tall around Eaton Canyon, but also looked the most generic, as it had that arid appearance that Southern California's mountains tend to have throughout the summer, even though it was spring. Not that there's anything wrong with this, but I just think the beauty of the other 2 trails stand out more. The waterfall, on the other hand, is quite special, as even with some crowds, the location feels quaint and remote. Eaton Canyon Falls is only about 40 feet tall, but to me, looked a tad bit larger than Millard Falls, maybe because its flow volume was slightly more. I'm not exactly sure what the reason is, but it's a gorgeous spot and I really enjoyed the experience of sitting at the base, combined with the trail in general.
Just concluded the hike to Eaton Canyon Falls. Another spectacular hike. Really fun, crossing the water a bunch of times. Mom, you completed both waterfall hikes. Yay!
Yay! It wasn't easy, but we did it. I just might as well go for it. And I went for it.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, it was worth it because the waterfalls and the streams were gorgeous.
For the last waterfall of the day, we're ending things out in a bang with the 6.7 mile out and back hike to Black Star Canyon Falls. The trailhead for this waterfall can be found about an hour south from the other two, actually in the northern section of the Cleveland National Forest, which is also technically where the aforementioned Cedar Creek Falls and Three Sisters Falls call home.
All right, guys, hike number 3 to waterfall number 3. This is Black Star Canyon Falls. We are now in Orange County, not Los Angeles County, so it's about an hour, hour and a half away. I'm here solo this time because this is supposed to be a rather difficult hike in comparison to the other two we did earlier, which were already not super easy because of all the crossings. Not only does this one have a lot of crossings, but there's not really a super designated trail. It's more just create your own path and work your way around the water. With the exception of the first 2 miles, which is literally just a dirt road, completely flat. So this is easy and not the most exciting. However, the scenery around here is still quite stunning. So yeah, soon we're gonna head into a canyon and it should be a great hike. This is one that's been on my bucket list for a long time, so I'm really looking forward to this.
As I said in the clip, I found the scenery, even on this flat, rather uninteresting part of the hike, to be fairly underrated. A lot of people said it was a snooze fest on all trails, and sure, maybe the service road section of the trail lasts a bit longer than I would have liked, but it's still good to see all the green mountains that eventually get taller as you progress closer to the start of the riverbed.
So we finally made it to the Black Star Canyon Falls sign. This is essentially where that service road is going to end, and you're going to make your way down to the start of the riverbed. And man, going in, I was under the impression that there would be a good stretch of unpaved road before you actually get to the, real trail. No, it's like 3/4 of the hike. So most of this is pretty easy, and this is where apparently the hard stuff is supposed to begin, so we'll see.
Once you make it to this sign that says Black Star Canyon Falls, you'll hook a left and make your way down to the creek and immediately begin the first few crossings. Now, I'll be honest, I had started to question why so many people said this hike was very difficult, as it hadn't been any harder than the other 2 trails we did that day. But the further you head upstream, the more technical the hike becomes, with rock scrambling and crossings where you absolutely have to get wet. If that wasn't enough, then came the last half a mile or so of intense uphill climbing that I was not prepared for. I actually hardly recorded any clips here because I was so concentrated on not getting lost and my safety as a whole. There were many instances that I would consider legitimately dangerous, which is why I was and am confused as to how this could be such a popular hike. I can only imagine that a small fraction of the people that attempt to complete this trail actually make it to the falls. But this was hard enough to where I'd say it's a top 15 most difficult hike I've experienced, likely in part due to the fast pace I had to maintain in order to make it back before sunset. Still, it felt like all of my effort had paid off when I made it to what might just be one of the most unique waterfalls I've ever seen. Black Star Canyon Falls clocks in at 65 to 80 feet tall, which is an impressive size for a Southern California waterfall. But that's not what allowed these falls to stand out as much as it did. It was the peculiar shape and appearance, starting with the secondary waterfall on the left that literally comes out of a tunnel. This was fascinating, as I don't think I've ever seen something like this before. But my favorite thing about the falls?
I know it might seem kind of silly, but the thing I was most looking forward to this waterfall, that right in the middle, it like swirls in a circle going out. It's so interesting. I've never seen a waterfall do that. It literally looks like a whirlpool in the center.
Black Star Canyon Falls was always a bucket list hike for me, as it's just an hour and a half from home, but I knew it would take proper planning to experience. To say it exceeded expectations would be an understatement. Not only was the hike the most thrilling and rewarding I've completed in Southern California, but the waterfall stands out as one of my favorites in the region. If you could only do one hike in this video, it goes without saying that this should be it as long as you feel you're capable of doing so. Just don't underestimate it, as it absolutely will kick your butt.
I finally made it. This hike will kick your butt. It's not even a hot day today, and that was probably one of the 10 hardest hikes I've ever been on. The scrambling at the end is so intense, and it feels like it's never going to end. But I'll tell you what, this waterfall, definitely worth the effort. This is absolutely incredible.
Before I wrap things up, I do have to address the one inherent downside with these hikes, and that's the graffiti one we'll see on the way to the waterfalls. It was worse on some trails as opposed to others, like I'd say Millard Falls was easily in the best condition. However, Eaton Canyon Falls had quite a bit more, and Black Star Canyon Falls had a very disturbing amount that did take away from my experience a bit. It's a shame others feel the need to damage such beautiful places, especially in an area like Southern California where large waterfalls are much harder to come across. So the next time you experience your favorite local hike, I'd encourage you to pick up any trash you see scattered around the trail so it can be enjoyed by those who cherish America's amazing natural beauty. Other than this, I had a fantastic day checking out some waterfalls I've been meaning to see for a while now. I know there's still some others that I hope to eventually cover on the channel, but for now, I feel like I've seen enough to count down my top favorite waterfalls in Southern California, which you can expect a video on in the coming weeks. Be sure to subscribe to Travel Dash so you don't miss it, and leave a like as it really helps out the channel. Thank you for watching everyone, and I'll see you very soon. Bye guys.